I'm Richard Wallace. I'm the chair of the trustees. We'd like to welcome you to our 6th annual Candidates Night. Just briefly, I'd like the other trustees to stand up. Marguerite Landry, Nancy Mayo, Nicole Dubonnet, Terry Ryan, and Dolores Fallon. Okay. Well, thank you for attending tonight, and we hope you'll keep us in mind and our other programs. Anyone who does not already receive the library's newsletter, you can sign up at the desk up here. We also have magnets. Everyone needs a magnet. And we also would ask you to fill out your comment card, because we'd like to know what you think of this. I'd like to now turn this over to John Wilson, our moderator.
Thank you, Richard. So for tonight, for the third or fourth time in a row, I'll be moderating this meeting. And as usual, we expect exemplary behavior from everybody. First, what I'd like to do is go over the ground rules for the meeting tonight for the candidates. And immediately following the ground rules, I'll read off the names of the candidates that are running unopposed this year, and then we'll get right to the debate among the candidates. When we get to the debate, each candidate in the contested races will be invited to come to the microphone and make a 2-minute introductory statement. And following each one of the statements, following that group of statements, we'll have a question and answer period for those candidates. 3 in the case of moderator and 2 in the case of planning board. And there'll be time allotted for those. We have some very efficient, but also very demanding timekeepers in the back of the room. So if the candidates go more than 5 or 6 seconds over their allotted time, right, Betsy will ring the bell, and she means it. Okay. Right, okay, and Betsy will...
Don't pretend I'm so petite
Right,
you can't see me.
right. So for those that happen to see it, we have a big round paper pie plate with 20 written on it, and that will signal the speaker up here in the front that that person has 20 seconds remaining. And as we mentioned, the bell will go off. The order of the statements was determined by the position of the candidates on the ballot. And I have 2 sample ballots here in front, and you can take your time and come up here later, take a look at them if you're so interested. For anybody that wants to ask a question or make a statement, we have a microphone over here on that aisle. And for those of you that have attended town meetings, it will be very similar to the town meeting, where you can line up at the microphone, make your statement, ask your question. The candidate will give his or her response to the question, and then we'll move on to the next person. And when all the questions are completed, we will then go to the closing statements by each of the candidates. And when we finish with the moderated candidates, we'll move to the planning board. So you don't have to go to the microphone for this, but are there any questions about the instructions? Okay, good. So as most of you here probably know, we have a number of elected officials or people running for elected positions that are running unopposed this year. And I am going to, again, in the order that they appear on the ballot, I'm going to read their names and the position that they are running for, and they will, some of them are already standing up, but if they could just raise their hand, and others, please just stand and turn around and face the audience, be recognized, and then sit down. There is no opportunity in this program for you in uncontested races to make statements, except afterwards if you wish to stay and talk to folks. So first we have Bonnie J. Faniff, candidate for re-election to the Board of Selectmen. Bonnie. John F. Rooney III, candidate for re-election to the Board of Selectmen. Nicholas A. McCoy, I did not see Nick, okay. Jeffrey W. Klein, candidate for re-election to the Board of Assessors. Jeffrey's not here. Christopher Evans, candidate for Assabet Valley Regional Technical School. Okay. Mary Lou Woodford, candidate for re-election to the Board of Health. Okay. Marguerite Landry is here, candidate for re-election to the Board of Trustees of the Library. Richard Wallace just spoke to you. Richard is over here to my right. He's a candidate for re-election to the Board of Trustees for the Library. I don't see Roger Challen here tonight. He's a candidate for re-election to the School Committee. Daniel Kalenda is a candidate for re-election to the Regional School Committee. I don't see Dan. Actually, it's not on here, but just any other elected officials that are not running this year, your name would have been here. But just stand up or raise your hand to be recognized. For all of you good folks. Paul Semino, Board of Selectmen, and Jim Haggerty, the town clerk, are in the rear of the room. So, I for one thank all of you for not only coming here, but all of you elected officials for stepping up to the plate and doing a lot of work every year. Everybody appreciates it. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. Probably those in this room appreciate it, and a lot of other people do. Some people think that all of these things that happen in town, like keeping a beautiful library open, or reviewing all the zoning bylaws, or looking at all of the functions of the community, just seem to happen. Well, let me tell you, they don't just seem to happen. People make it happen, and we appreciate it. So at this point, I'd like to ask the candidates for moderator, Desiree Azelbekian, William Boland, and Stephen Morielli, to please come forward. And there are seats here behind me, and if you take those seats, we'll begin the program and the debate. You can sit to the side. Make yourselves comfortable.
I'll sit right behind you.
Sure. Yes, that's fine. And here in the front, there are the two microphones, the one that I'm using, and the one here right in front of Desiree. So we'll begin with the program with Desiree Azelbekian making her 2-minute introductory statement. Ms. Azelbekian.
Thank you,
And you can
John.
feel free to use this one.
Okay, great. Good evening. My name is Desiree Azelbekian, and I hadn't really planned on running for office this year, but at my mother's insistence, here I am. Our current town moderator, David Coombs, presided over his last meeting this month. He served our community with distinction as a selectman and moderator. Now it's time for a new chapter, and I hope you will join me on this journey to my own podium. Many of you may be thinking, what is town moderator and why does she want this position? The moderator is an elected official who presides over town meeting and makes several appointments, including the advisory committee, personnel board, and the public works planning board. I have always been enthralled in local town politics, and I remember my first town meeting like it was yesterday. It was actually 17 years ago when I was just 18 years old and running for the regional school committee. I am confident I have developed the necessary skills to preside over our town meeting. I was the chair of the regional school committee when our town had its biggest town meeting in history with about 2,000 attendees. We were voting on the Algonquin Ad Ren. There was contention and debate, so I had to be at the best and top of my game procedurally wise to ensure a successful passage of the project. Not only do I know the rules of the hall, I think there are a number of improvements that can be made to create more efficiency, boosting attendance and participation. Also, I'm committed to making the moderator appointment process more open and transparent. Please visit my positions page at electdesiree.com for more specifics of my plan. As a community, we have an opportunity to modernize a position rich in New England culture and tradition. Town meeting is something that I care about passionately, and I truly believe it is the essence of local decision-making. Every year brings a new challenge. I am ready to lead our town in facilitating a town meeting experience that welcomes participation, yet strives for clarity and efficiency. Visit electdesiree.com for more information about me and my ideas. I kindly ask for your vote on Monday, May 9th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce William Boland, candidate for town moderator.
Let me just see Betsy. Good, now I can't see you. Good evening, my name's Bill Boland. Thanks to the trustees and to Ryan for putting this event on again. I'm a fourth generation of Southborough. I've been on the Board of Selectmen. I was on for 9 years, chairman for 3+ years. Before that, I was on the advisory committee, and previous to that, I was on the capital budget committee, serving as chairman on many of those years. So I've been involved in town politics. I attended my first town meeting when I was in 7th grade, sitting in the bleachers at the old Wooded School. So that means I've, gone to about 20 town meetings or so. But I think it's a situation. Some people asked me to run for moderator. I hemmed and hawed, but I thought, perhaps it'd be a good way to continue giving to the town. I think if you're in the audience, if you go to town meeting, if you vote, if you watch the meetings on TV or you go to the meetings, you should probably know who the three of us are. We've all been very active in the town. We've been chairman of different committees, and I think it's pretty easy for you to maybe compare us in your mind and see who do you think would be the best moderator. It's an important position. Desiree mentioned some of the things involved in the role. The biggest thing is to kind of move town meeting along and to be fair to everyone who wants to speak, as well as fair to the people who want the meeting to move along. And I think I could do a pretty good job of that. But I don't think you can really make a bad choice between the three of us. I know everyone, and the one thing about moderator is it's a one-year position. So you give us one shot, and then you say, "Nah, we're gonna go along." And we've had some great people before me that have done a great job. So I think you kind of know what my positions are. I'm not going to put signs up. I'm not going to do a lot. My Saturdays, unfortunately, are pretty taken up these days. But feel free to call, ask any questions, and I'd appreciate your vote on the 9th. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Stephen Morielli, candidate for moderator. Steve?
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. My name is Steve Morielli. Thanks to library trustees. Thanks to Southborough Access Media. And for Beth for coordinating. Thank you to John, who's been at this for such a long time, 24 years. I have to do a little bit of shortening, but I want to say that my family has been here since 1988. And my wife, Kathy, and I have put 3 girls through Algonquin School, Southborough Schools. And I was encouraged to run by the current moderator, Dave Coombs. And I've decided to seek election to continue serving town. I want to continue to ensure integrity and independence of the position of the town meeting. I'm interested in no other position. This is not a stepping stone for me. This is the only thing I will run for. There are things that I have to learn. I don't know it all, I can assure you, but I would seek advice from my predecessor, if that worked out, and from other moderators and current town moderators. I've been in public service for 40 years. I know it doesn't look it. But I started serving my service in the Army, and to those who have served, I salute you. Myself, I was a police officer in Dover, New Hampshire. I was a special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration for 20 years, and I was a manager when I left there, and then went on to manage the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Inspector General Office, where we oversaw Medicare and Medicaid fraud. For 15 years, I was a coach, and that was probably the best job that I had when I could leave Boston and go and coach on the soccer field. I've served Southborough in the past. I've been the chair of an ad hoc committee with my colleague Desiree many years ago, remember that, to revise the drug and alcohol policy at Algonquin. And I've served several years for the Youth Commission, and recently stepped down where I served as the chair of the Personnel Board for more than 15 years. I didn't even look at that. Town moderator is an extremely important position. And one of the reasons is because of the way it is serving the town. It serves as an opportunity for checks and balances, so no single entity has power. And that is one of the things that I want to do, is to make sure that it maintains independence. And the last thing I will say is we have to remember this, that you do not and cannot take a position on town matters when you're the town moderator. You can't be an activist. You actually have to moderate and facilitate the meeting so that everybody has the opportunity to be heard, and then you can move town governance along. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Now it's time for questions and answers. The microphone is over here to my right along the wall, and hopefully, we have a couple people. Mr. Stiver.
Thank you. I'm Sam Stivers.
Yeah.
Sam Stivers, 7 Presidential Drive. I have a question primarily for, actually, I'm an advisory committee member, but I'm speaking as a private citizen. Question primarily for Ms. Hasselbeck and Mr. Boland. I was at the transfer station last week collecting signatures for a citizen petition for much of the day. I saw Mr. Moriali there. I didn't see either of the other two of you there meeting people and asking for votes. I see Mr. Moriali's signs all over town. Mr. Boland indicated he's not going to put signs out. I mean, to me, politics, local politics, is a person-to-person business. And I'm disappointed, I guess, that I see what I view as a substantial lack of effort to get the job from the two of you. And I wonder how the voters should be comfortable in believing that you're going to exert more energy to do the job if you're elected, because I don't see the effort, commitment, intensity, desire here. I'd like to see somebody who actually acts like they want the job before I'm eager to vote for them. So I appreciate your thoughts on why we're not seeing much of this.
Come on ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Stivers. I have run for election many times for many different things. I've been successfully elected to the school committees, both of them twice. I've had 2 unsuccessful bids for selectman, and now I'm seeking moderator. Just because you don't go to a transfer station, however, sir, doesn't mean that you're not actively engaging in the town and in the population and talking with people and learning what people have to say about the role that you want to be elected to. I have an active website, electdesiree.com, that has a number of my policies and positions, so I would encourage everybody to go to see that. And I do plan on being at the transfer station quite readily with literature that I'll be passing out. But, you know, unlike the presidential election, I don't think we should be discussing things for 2 years or 2 months. I decided to run for this when the nomination papers were due. Right after that, my grandfather passed away. So I needed a couple of weeks to move on, if you will, Mr. Stivers. And I've done that, and now I'm ready to campaign. And I think that the people with what I see this evening, the candidates' night, as a true kickoff. These, people don't start putting out signs until after town meeting, which was when Mr. Moriali put out his. And he has every right to do that. I won't be putting out signs. Instead, I am going to continue in my effort to talk with people in this community, as I have for my whole life, and continue to get feedback from people on what they really see the vision of what the town moderator should be doing for them throughout the next year, which is what this term is for. Thank you.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
Excuse me, just 1 minute. I don't know if we made it clear. We're going to ask the candidates and the questioners, keep the questions to a minute, if you can state it in a minute, and keep the answers to 2 minutes, which seems to be reasonable. So that's why you see me putting it. If you go 5 seconds over, but we just want to avoid the perfect. Thank you.
You do that again, Betsy.
And for you, Bill, I'm going to dance down the aisle so you can see me.
I'm going to take the glasses off again. Thanks, Mr. Stivers, for your question. Do I want the position? Sure, I want the position. Do I have the time right now to spend a Saturday at the transfer station handing out pamphlets or doing other things? I don't. Last Saturday, I took a daughter to a college that she's looking forward to going to. This Saturday, I'm tied up with my other daughter who has the prom Saturday night, and my wife's out of town. Next Saturday, I'm actually out of town. So signs don't vote. That's one reason that I bought some Morielli signs and put them up around town to have people say that, why does he want this so badly? Again, my position is, you've seen me, you've seen Desiree. I think a lot of people have seen Steve, and I think we all have the qualities and ability to be an excellent town moderator and to, fairly appoint people to committees and run the town meeting. The one great thing about elections is people are allowed to vote whoever they want as the candidate to succeed. And if more signs or a longer pamphlet or mailers, impresses somebody more, that's great. As I say, I don't have a problem with it because I think there's 3 good candidates here. And, honestly, I'm not going to cry if I don't get elected to moderator, but I'd really like to get the position, and I hope people would vote for me. Thanks.
Thanks. I understand everybody's got busy lives. I just am looking for a little more hustle, I guess, in terms of going after the job. So thank you.
Sal Giolandino.
Sal Girolandino, 7 Summit Road, South Row. Before I ask my question, I want to thank the 3 of you for running, especially in these times where public service has been devalued.
Yeah, I can get a little closer to it.
Okay. So I wanted to thank the 3 of you. I've worked with the 3 of you. I've had my agreements with you. I've had my disagreements with you. But one thing I do not take away from you and praise you is that your commitment and your desire to serve, and good for you. My question is this: what do the terms diversity, honesty, and transparency mean to you as individuals who want to basically be elected to what is a very important position in Southborough? So those 3 words, diversity, honesty, and transparency. What do those words mean to you?
And no looking at your dictionaries to get the answers.
Diversity, honesty, and what was the third one? Sal, what was it? Transparency. Okay, thanks. So my response to that, thank you, Sal. And thanks for saying that and asking that question. Integrity is everything, and integrity is the only way I survived as a DEA agent, as a police officer, as a professor now at Worcester State. Integrity is absolutely everything. I think this particular position demands integrity. It demands independence. In terms of diversity, that word conjures in my mind that when you are appointing, you don't appoint people you know necessarily, or people who are willing to serve. You've got to go out and you've got to grab people who are interested. The town of Southborough has a diverse number of people, voters, active, and they're very, very intellectual people. And I think that we would all benefit by bringing new blood, if you will, to the table. So that's how I would say see diversity and what that means. And I can't even read my writing. Oh, transparency, and that's the other thing. I think that's very important. Is that when you're making the appointments, if I were elected, one of the things that I would use is the town and the town website to put out a call for people who, in other words, there's an opening on the personnel board or whatever the three boards that the town moderator appoints, and to make a call. And at that point in time, I would not object even to say, we've got 3 people who are interested. You've got a week to comment before the decision is made. And then when that is made, it goes out, basically welcoming that person to the fold of the advisory board or the personnel board or wherever. And that's how I would approach those 3. Thanks. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Gianlandino. I think that those 3 words are very important to the role of the moderator. There's been a little bit of talk this week in the press, in the local blogosphere, about vetting out people that don't necessarily agree with you. In my opinion, that's no way to have robust dialogue, discussion, sometimes a little bit of conflict. That's all good for a community. Having differing people having a seat at the table helps to get a better product. So while I certainly would have criteria of appointing people to boards and committees as a moderator, one of my number 1 criteria would be transparency and openness. It's something that I continue to run on and believe in relative to this town and our government. And obviously, I would look for criteria in if you're asking for an appointment on the personnel board. Have you ever had any HR experience? That's something that needs to be a criteria when you're looking to appoint people to boards and committees. However, you have to look at the total picture, and you can't do that by making an appointment over the phone. You have to do that by making the appointment process for these very important boards and committees open to the public, meaning having a public meeting. If I were to be the town moderator, I would have a public meeting. First, I would advertise, just as Mr. Moriarty would. I would use the town website, the town resources, and advertise. But once those resumes came in, I would absolutely have a public meeting where the public could have some input, some questions could be asked of candidates relative to the criteria that I set out for the particular board and appointment, and then you make your decision in public. No more secret phone calls, no more getting your buddies on board with what you're wanting to do. Have real open transparency in government, and that's certainly how I would run the open meeting portion of the appointments.
Thank you. So we've heard a lot of the same thing, integrity, honesty, diversity, all important for actually being the moderator, running a meeting, making sure everyone has equal opportunity to speak, to get their opinion heard. As far as when it comes to appointing people to committees, we have a lot of people that have been on committees for a long time. And sometimes that's great, and sometimes it's time to try to bring in some new blood and sadly tell someone, I think as the appointing authority, I'm going to try and go in a different direction and bring a little more diversity into this group. And that's what I'm in favor of. But that doesn't mean that if somebody was on a committee for multiple terms that I'm going to say, you're not going to be reappointed just because you've been on there before. As well, when you're looking at candidates, you have to look at why are people coming forward. And it's great that lately we have a little more interest. We've seen times in the past when there were 7 people looking for 2 positions on a committee, and then we've seen situations where we can't find 1 person willing to sit on a committee. So you really have to try, as anyone appointing to a committee, you have to try and get the word out that we're looking for people. And sometimes that's personally going out and trying to recruit some people that you may have met at a meeting or something like that and think they might do a good job at it. That's what I'm about, to try and get good quality people in there. A lot of times when somebody's interested in a committee, there are two reasons usually. They want to serve their town, they've maybe done some things before in a previous community, or they have an agenda, they have a grudge. And as an appointing person, I think that's something you also have to look at and see, is this somebody who's going to come to the committee with a fair, open mind, or is it someone who's just looking to, get back at someone by being on a committee because some decision from conservation or something went against them. So I think it's very important, and it has to be from the appointing authority and for the people that want to be on that committee. Thanks.
I have a follow-up question. That is, what have each of you done to promote diversity, honesty, and transparency in government?
Take that in the same order.
Whatever you do. In town government or government? Well, I'm the chair of the Criminal Justice Department at Worcester State University. We have 600 students and 10 faculty members, several adjuncts. One of the things that I preach without question is that integrity is everything. And if your integrity is not there, then I don't want you in the department. I don't want you to be a CJ major. The time to learn lessons is right there as young people. On the personnel board, I think that I ran meetings as fairly as I could. I always tried to bring some humor to those meetings. I always looked for different points of view, which I think is important before making a decision, and for gathering that information before you do that. So in terms of integrity, I think that is my number one, it's my core principle, integrity. In terms of transparency, I don't know of anything that I've done behind the scenes because of open meeting law. You've got to do things that way. That generally is how we have brought people on board, personnel board, and dealt with the many people that on the personnel board we had to deal with in terms of considering people for raises. There were situations where there was some subpar conduct for members who were coming forward, and we didn't necessarily allow that raise to take place until there was some change. And in terms of diversity, while I was there, I sort of insisted, as the father of 3 daughters, I insisted that there be at least one woman on the personnel board, and as it turned out, I believe there were 2 at one point in time. So that's where I've tried to do. And when you talk about diversity, I mean, in diversity at school, that's all it is. That's all we do. We focus on that. We're about a 50-50 split between males, females, and other differences. Thank you, sir.
That's right.
Thanks for your follow-up, Sal. I think in terms of transparency, I might have been one of the poster people for that last year when I ran for selectman. And I would like to say that some of my openness and my questioning of government, attending several, maybe over 75% of selectmen's meetings, just as an audience member, and really pushing the envelope on that. I'd like to think that I had a stake in making our town a little bit more transparent. Now we have the selectmen are posting their minutes of their meetings. They're posting packet information with full packet details about what they're talking about at their meetings. This didn't necessarily happen before I ran for selectman last year. So I hope that I had a little bit of a push in the right direction for different boards and committees in town to make our community more open and have participants and residents be able to, learn more because the information is readily available. In terms of honesty and diversity, I mean, that's something that you're going to get if you log on to my local political blog, Eyes on Southborough. I'm about as honest as you get. I tell it like I see it. Some people don't like me for that, and that's okay. Sometimes you just have to push the envelope a little bit and give an alternate opinion It's not always the most popular opinion, but I think that I offer diverse opinions just by who I am and what I believe in. And I hope that the voting public sees that. I do, however, recognize that the moderator is a neutral party. So when it comes, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, then you have to do your job. So I hope that I have the opportunity to do that job as your next moderator.
Mr. Boland?
Thank you. So as selectman, I participated in appointing many different people to various committees, sometimes trying to recruit people to those committees, hiring several police chiefs, fire chief, et cetera. And my position is always the same. You try to choose the best candidate for a position, regardless of race, sex, anything else. It's nice to recruit people to get some diversity on committees, but if someone isn't the most qualified to be on there, then I'm not going to appoint someone or vote to appoint someone just because I think there should be a better mix in something, or hire them for that same reason. I think I'm a very honest person. You know, some people say that town government was hiding things, whatever else. I don't believe in that. I think our government has always been pretty open, and if you ask questions, you can get it. Open meeting laws create some different things with costs to get some documents, whatever else, and I think the state is making some changes to that for the good. But I think my record of appointments and hirings and running meetings is pretty good. Sometimes people make mistakes, you know, but you learn, you go on, and you do a better job the next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Baust?
Sue Bass, 28 Linus Farm Road. A question for all three of you. I wonder what you're going to do to improve the tenor of town meeting. I was disturbed by the disrespect shown to the town moderator, the town council, and a number of the speakers in the town council.
Somebody want it? In the town of Hudson. Did that?
Yes, the town of Hudson.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Sue. I know exactly what you're talking about with the town of Hudson. And in fact, if you read the Metro West article, I think it was 2 days ago, it boasts how well the town of Hudson is doing relative to its improvements on Main Street, and that it has attracted a number of new businesses, primarily restaurants was featured in that article, and that the amount of taxes that are being brought in by the town's redevelopment of that area are upwards of a few $100,000 extra in a year. So if you have a chance to look at that article, it was very interesting. But I do understand what you're referring to, Sue. And I think that unfortunately, sometimes there are a lot of emotions at town meeting, whether you're in favor or opposed to something. And sometimes the emotions take over with people, but it is the job of the moderator to have somewhat of a command of the room, not to stifle comments or to try to get your personal opinion with people that you know that may personally agree with you to talk or not talk. But there needs to be a command presence so that people knows that the moderator is in charge of the discussion and that decorum must be followed. There are rules of town meeting. You know, town meeting time is the rule book and the guide for moderators in our area. And again, I really believe it's about having that presence so that people know that every single commenter and presentation is valued. And I think that that's a very important part of commanding the room when you are the moderator. And you cannot be afraid to gavel down if you feel that somebody is personally attacking someone else, or that there is not, or that the rules of the hall aren't being followed. And it may not be the most, perfect thing that you have to do. You don't want to stop somebody from saying what they have to say, but if it's not within the rules, you have to take charge of the situation.
Steve? Yes.
I would agree with what Desiree said. And at the last town meeting, I would say if I was your town moderator, I would have ruled a few people out of order. If, at least, to caution them that they were on the verge of being out of order. And basically, it is about setting the rules. It's like dealing with your kids. There's consequences for your actions. But it's about having the right temperament, the right demeanor, reminding people what the rules are, and also one of the things that happens, and it happened a couple of times, where you get some agitation, irritation about the discussion. You don't want to stifle that conversation between two sides of a particular issue. But at some point in time, it may very well be that you're going to have to sit down, comport yourself. I've had to do that in many a meeting myself. Sit down, comport yourself, and when you're ready, and when I don't have to listen to you yell whatever you're saying, then you'll be allowed to come back up. I think the other thing that kind of got out of hand was where repeat customers came to the microphone. And it actually, it may have caused some other people not to ever have been heard. And so that, again, is the role of the moderator, to kind of keep check and balance on who's speaking, next, maintain some period of time. I'm feeling like I'm running on myself right now. At some point in time, hold it to a minute or hold it to 2 minutes, and let's move on with some more information, and then either call the vote or move to the next person or raise the question. Thank you. Sorry, Bill, I just did grab my glass.
So running a public meeting, whether town meeting, a regular meeting in the town or the community you live in, is oftentimes a tightrope walk, because you have to pick that balance between allowing people to speak and possibly get a little emotional, because it may be a very emotional topic to some people, or to shut them down or try to calm them down because they're getting a little too intense. The one thing you never want to let anyone do is to insult someone. You don't want town meeting or a public meeting to break into a session of the Prime Minister's questions. We want to be civil, but I think if you also look at the history of town meeting in this town and other towns, this isn't really something new. Years ago, when they were talking about expanding land or taking someone's land or doing some things, people would get emotional, and people might get a little loud and belligerent. But you really have to try to be able to give the people a little rope, let them speak, but again, not be insulting, not continue to get up and say the same thing over again, or downgrade someone who's speaking. And it's not an easy thing. If it was an easy thing, we wouldn't see it at town meetings, we wouldn't see it at some of our meetings. And I've chaired meetings where I've had to try and calm someone down, or just, sometimes you lose your cool. And you may react to that person in a way you're not happy with. So part of it is to just try to say, get what you want across, but try to be nice to everyone, and let's go on with a productive meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Julie Connolly, 26 Oakville Road. I'm curious to hear the candidate's position on whether you think that things should be done to modernize and streamline the format of town meetings so as to increase citizen participation. As we know, not that many people end up going to town meeting, and especially when it drags into multiple nights, it gets hard for people to participate. So I'm curious to hear what you think might be able to be done about that.
Anybody have a comment?
Yeah.
Steve.
Thank you. How are you? I would say one of the things that if I was elected your moderator, I would almost immediately get with the Board of Selectmen and put together a joint committee, a very short-term joint committee, maybe 3 months, to be able to take a look at best practices elsewhere and see what we could do. You see some of the things on the blog and what we talked about. Is it a Saturday? Is it better? How do we do it? And how do we shorten it? And how do we manage it a little bit better, much like what's going on here in terms of 2 minutes, sit down. And so that's one of the things, even to the point where you would try to have that report back in time to report to the town meeting so that it could take place within a year or two. And that's one of the things that, as I begin to explore town meeting, town moderator, I'm beginning to look much closer. You set your eye on something, and now you start looking, well, how do they do it? How do they do it? I'm not sure how I feel about the electronic side of things. That's something I would have to see in practice before I would jump jump to that conclusion, and certainly it's not, again, the people who would make that decision are the people in town meeting. Because you want to remember that you, all of you who come to town meeting are the town legislature. You, in town meeting, being moderated by a town moderator, are the people who keep your elected officials in check, whether you want money spent or not, whether you want something modified or not, whether you want a new fire truck or not. These are pretty serious things. And remember, one of the reasons we have town meetings, especially here in New England, is because we are in the land of local control. And that's why we want it. And that's why we don't want to give it up. And I think that trying to streamline, as you suggest, and find out who's doing what. I was talking to John earlier, and I just reached out to the believe it or not, he knows, there's the Mass Moderators Association, to try to find out what's going on, what are you doing, what's working, how are you bringing more people in. So that's one of the things that I would do, or some of the things I would do. Thank you.
In fact, I would employ some of the same techniques that Steve talked about. I actually published as moderator, I would encourage participation by on my website. And right on my website, it clearly says work with the Board of Selectmen to conduct a town meeting participation survey. I'd like to gauge, the last time that we had a gauge of town meeting relative, I think you might be talking maybe about a Saturday or something like that, was about 20 years ago. And it wasn't defeated by much. I think it was only 1 or 2 votes. So there hasn't really been much talk since then about change of how our legislature meets, because that is what it is. It's our town-wide legislature, on what day it meets. So I think that would be a very well worth exercise, and I certainly would conduct that. Additionally, however, I think that there are other things that can be done pre-town meeting to help increase participation and help inform citizens of how town meeting works. I think one of the reasons why sometimes town meeting lacks efficiency is because people don't really know what it's about. Donna McDaniel has done a great job at doing a small video talking about town meeting, but I certainly think that the moderator should take the helm. It is the elected official in charge of these things, and should really do a pre-town meeting video of exactly what the warrant is for that year. So it would be conducted every year. Review of the warrant, review of some of the most popular calls of the hall, if you will. And I think that would be a very fruitful exercise as well, so people can click to something and view a short 10-minute video. I also would want to conduct a pre-town meeting with the boards and committees, particularly the Board of Selectmen and Advisory, and really look at how we could better flow the warrant. If you can better flow the warrant, then you can conduct things quicker. You can do all budgetary items here, all zoning here, etc. So I think that there's room to grow. Thanks.
Thanks. I think there's ways to potentially improve town meeting and speed it up. There's a lot of things that have been tossed around and considered in the past. Some towns have gone with the electronic voting where everyone gets a device when they come into the hall. One of the benefits of that is you don't feel any pressure if you disagree with the person sitting next to you in voting a different way. I've participated in meetings that use those, and with 30 people, they're constantly, oh wait, let's vote again, let's do this, let's do that. So I think sometimes that can be more confusing than just saying yes or no or standing up. But it should be looked at. It's expensive. I think it's about $20,000 to rent a system for a town meeting. And then you have to be concerned with, okay, if someone leaves, are they handing that device in, or did they give it to the person sitting next to them that they can vote twice? So there's a lot of things like that. We've considered Saturday town meetings. I mean, as I say, I've been going since I was 7th grade. There's a lot of different things out there. Westboro has gone to a Saturday town meeting. Westboro is a much larger community with us. They struggle with the same thing. At the recent Westboro town meeting, their Saturday day session, they had about 200 people. They break for supper, and they had just over 100 people come back for the night session. So even the Saturdays, people have to have an interest. And I'm a big believer in, you know, this is the greatest system going if you want to have a say in your government. You come out, you vote. Both parents might not be able to come. One might have to stay home with the kids. I think we looked at some babysitting things before and different things. So anything that we can consider to try and get more participation. You know, speeding up. There's some people that don't think it should be sped up. That, you know, we really need to consider these things and deliberate. But there's other things that you can probably group together and just say, does anyone oppose these particular things, and move it along. But always look for ways to improve things.
Mr. Phillips, and we'll make this the last question for the moderator debate, because we'll then go to final comments and then go to the planning board. Steve.
Thank you. Steve Phillips, 26 Main Street. My experience at town meeting has been that procedurally it seems to run really well almost all of the time. The couple of areas that have caused me concern over the pet, first of all, it seems like sometimes when we're voting on an amendment or trying to limit debate or something like that there tends to be confusion in terms of people understanding exactly what they're voting for. And so I would urge, you know, extra caution in that, or carefulness in that, in terms of making sure that we understand this is a vote to shut off debate, this is a vote on the motion, that over the past few years I think that it seems like there's been some confusion. But the other issue is that, to me, it seems like the process of calling for a vote can be very unruly at times. That you get people shouting from their seats, you get people jumping on microphones, and that's the real question I would ask you as candidates. How do you make sure that everybody's voices, that people's voices are heard, and that particularly that the rules for shutting off debate and calling for a vote are followed, because it seems like we've had some real issues in that area.
Steve, again, it's about having command of the room. It's about knowing the rules, having command of over the meeting, and being able to execute the rules even when it may not be the most popular thing to do. And that I can tell you that I am fully prepared to do. In terms of outlining, I think you're absolutely correct, Steve, that oftentimes I think there is some confusion. I've even had confusion of, are we voting on an amendment now? Are we voting to move the question? What exactly are we doing? And I think what has been a little lax the past few years is to just identifying every step of the process a little bit more clearly. So if there's no more participation at the microphone, I would obviously reiterate what exactly we're voting on, whether it is a majority vote or a 2/3 vote. And I would just quickly, very briefly, go through the process just so everybody understands what we're voting on. I think that's very important. But in terms of, again, decorum of the meeting and people shouting, it's about knowing the rules of procedure, knowing that the moderator controls the meeting and can stop that behavior. And it's about executing that. Because I think that there oftentimes does need to be a little bit more civility. I would completely agree with you. And again, the moderator holds the cards. They hold the gavel.
Thank you. And my concern is not so much civility as in making sure that people, that the rules are followed, that people speak who, you know, if somebody's in line to speak in a microphone, they should get their chance to speak unless the rules are followed in terms of calling.
Yes.
The only thing I'll say to that, Steve, thank you, is three things I think that the moderator serves. And one of those things, the moderator serves as a communicator, an educator, and an enforcer in sorts. And to me, the first two are more important than the enforcement side. And that's the way I would play it. Say, okay, now here's where we're at. Let's relive it. This is what we're voting on. Believe me, I've been at many a meeting like, what the hell? Not just a town meeting, any meetings, to say this is where we're at. This is what we're voting on. A yes will mean this, because that's a confusing part sometimes. What will my yes vote mean? So that's just as important. And understanding the rules, obviously, as Desiree, I couldn't say anything different. Thank you.
Mr. Baldwin.
Thank you. They've said pretty much a lot of it. It can be difficult at times with amendments flying back and forth and different motions and things. You just have to really try to take your time and make sure that you know what is being voted on, and then to make sure all the people in the audience know what's being voted on, as well as the clerk and anyone else who needs to keep track of these things. You have the clerk there to help you out and make sure he has amendment motions, everything else. Again, to me, you don't want to stifle. You want to let people speak and get their point across, but you don't want to let them drone on for 7 minutes. And I think you want to try to be fair and let no one speak again unless a direct question is asked through the moderator of that person, and then let them answer that. But you give everyone a chance to speak, and then if that's satisfied, move on. You know, we've all been to town meeting. I've been going for a long time, and I can read the room pretty good. So, I know when people are ready to vote. But again, if somebody really feels strongly about making a comment and they haven't yet, you have to let them make those comments, and then clearly say, good to say out loud so everyone can agree with you. Okay, we are voting on the amendment to the motion, which means a yes vote changes the motion to be this, and a no vote defeats that, and we're back to the original question. And I think you have to, be willing to let people maybe shut out and say, I don't know what we're voting on. Could you please explain? So the big thing is to try and be fair and let people get their point across, but keep people from monopolizing it. And by all means, make sure you know what is being voted on and the people understand what's being voted on.
Okay, I thank everyone for your questions. And now we go to closing statements. Ms. Hasselbeck.
I want to thank the Board of Library Trustees, the Friends of the Library, and the staff for hosting this year's Candidates Night. I believe the moderator should have 3 main goals: transparency, efficiency, and active participation. As moderator, I would promote transparency by advertising all vacant and open positions, holding public meetings to interview all candidates for appointment, and welcome the public to participate in that process. There will be no more secret phone call appointments. As moderator, I would implement 3 efficiency improvements to begin with. Hold an annual pre-town meeting for the public to familiarize themselves with town meeting procedure. Apply guidelines for presentations that are uniform and precise, and maintain decorum by applying the rules more evenly and fairly to speakers. As moderator, I would encourage participation by maintaining an active account to ensure people can reach me easily, welcome feedback, and to work with the Board of Selectmen to conduct a town meeting participation. Please visit electdesiree.com for more information, and I ask for your vote on May 11th was last year. It's May 9th this year. Thank you.
The closing statements are 1 minute. That was what was sent to all the candidates, in case you're wondering why I'm being done so quickly. It's a 1 minute closing statement.
Thank you. I'd ask for your vote on May 9th as moderator. I feel I have the tools to be a successful moderator. I know how the meetings run. I know most of the intricacies, tough for me to say that word, of how the meeting runs. I believe I would be fair in allowing people to speak, allowing people to participate in the meetings, and allowing for people to get their point across that they'd like to be appointed to a committee and appoint some new faces or some old faces to those committees, and have a successful town government through the committees such as Advisory, Public Works Planning Board, and Personnel, and also for the town meeting. And again, I think we've got some great candidates. I hope you'll vote for who you think will best represent us at town meeting. And whoever it is, I hope we can try to encourage some more participation in town meeting as well as in the government on the committees that we appoint to. Thanks very much.
Memorial.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here tonight. I ask for your vote. I want to be your moderator. I believe in integrity, independence, very, very important things. If you have any ideas on how town meeting should operate or ideas for the town moderator, you can reach out to me by email at samorielli, I'll give you that afterwards, at me.com, SAMORREALE at me.com, and I will get back to you. I would say in closing, there's 3 takeaways I'd ask for you as I stand before you looking to be the next moderator. Independence, impartiality, and civility are important to the town meeting process, and it is my hope and wish that I would be able to bring that to town meeting. I would recommend a code of conduct for community members appointed to boards by the town moderator so that they could be civil in their interactions with people. And lastly, I would not take any positions as your town moderator, either implied or otherwise, on matters before town meeting, because as I said, town moderator can't be an activist, must be impartial, and must be above the fray and explain and be a better communicator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to thank all the candidates for moderator. You may return to your seats.
Now we got to be with them.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite the candidates for the planning board to come forward. Ms. Luttrell, Mr. Nicholson. Just have a, if you want to just take a seat and okay, again, the format is identical. There'll be 2-minute opening statements by the candidates. Ms. Luttrell will go first, and then there'll be then Mr. Nicholson, then a period of questions and answers, and then closing statements. Okay? Ms. Luttrell.
Good evening, I'm Mimi Luttrell. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all this evening. I am running for the position of planning board because I care deeply how change will affect our town in the coming years. And as a planning board member, I believe I can impact that change for the benefit of all town residents. I know Southborough. I am a 25-year resident. My children have gone all through Southborough schools and have volunteered in numerous capacities through that time. Through that experience, I've become very familiar with town government and a wide variety of town issues, particularly those pertaining to the planning board. There are many reasons why I believe I can be an effective planning board member. First, I appreciate the importance of the planning board. Every meeting, the planning board, for better or worse, can change the look, feel, and character of our town. Second, my long experience will enable me to hit the ground running on May 10th and be a fully up-to-speed planning board member. I've been actively involved in planning and land use issues in Southborough for the past 13 years as a member of the Open Space Preservation Commission. I've worked closely with town planners and I've attended way too many planning board meetings. Third, I'm very familiar with the state laws and the town bylaws that provide the legal structure for planning board processes and decisions. Fourth, I bring an independent and objective view to the planning board. I have no conflicts of interest, either real or apparent, and I can address each issue that comes before the planning board based on the facts with no preconceived biases. Fifth, I believe in transparency in public boards. Thank you. Please vote for me now.
Mr. Nicholson.
Hi, I'm Craig Nicholson, running for planning board, clearly. I promised my daughter I would do this. She calls him McDonald Trump, but I just had to say I want to make Southborough great again. But clearly, actually, really why I'm running for planning board is because I moved to Southborough for obvious reasons that I'm sure everyone else here did. Open space, the reservoirs, the sense of community, the recreation opportunities, the schools, all the things that it has to offer, its character, everything that there is about Southborough that we all love. And all I want to do is preserve that. Mimi alluded to perceived biases. I'm a real estate developer. There's not going to be any hiding it. Anyone who's looked up my name or anything else knows that that's what I do. That doesn't mean I'm pro-development. That means I'm pro things that enhance communities. And that's really all where it comes down to. You know, I looked around the town and thought about where things are that make sense to be developed. And one of the things that keeps hitting my head is where the Starbucks is. That used to be White's Corner, and I've been here since 2000, went back to California for a little while, came back, so the better part of 16 years I've been in Southborough. The only thing I remembered about White's Corner before it became Starbucks was the semi-trucks parked in the parking lot. That's all I remember about it. That's smart development. That's something that benefits the town, gives it things that enhance not only our lives as residents, but the business community, so that they have people that want to work in those offices, that have the ability to go to a restaurant and have lunch and grab a coffee and everything else. And that just benefits us across the board. And those are the types of things that the town should look at. But at the same time, you do it in a way that doesn't change the nature of the town. And it's that simple. You have to preserve the nature of the town. But you can't fear the fact that it's going to change. Otherwise, we'd be stuck with White's Corner. Thank you. Vote for me May 9th.
Okay. How did I know you were going to stand up with a question? Mr. Stivers.
Sam Stivers, 7 President Drive, advisory member of Speakers and Witnesses. I want to follow up on Mr. Nicholson's comment about his professional job as a developer. As I've commented to you privately previously, I'm very concerned about this in terms of appearance of conflict in that role. Your Nicholson Development website says that you're, quote, well connected with the inner workings of municipalities, unquote, to assist developers with granting permits for development projects. The website also lists a group of partners with whom you work, some of whom actually appear frequently before town boards, including the planning board. The combination of day job getting permits for developers and a night job approving permits for developers seems to me to fit the State Ethics Commission definition of appearance of conflict, where they say, quote, acting in a manner that would make a reasonable person think you can be improperly influenced is prohibited in their work. They offer a little wiggle room, but their fundamental position is clear and simple: don't do it. Your being a planning board member puts you in a position, I think, where a reasonable person can believe that your clients or partners might want to create improper influence. It doesn't say whether you would be improperly influenced or not, but it's the appearance. So my question is, first, do you agree that this is a conflict potential? And second, if you do see a conflict potential here, I'm curious, because I can't figure out how you deal with it. How would you plan to deal with it?
Being in real estate isn't a conflict. It gives me knowledge on understanding the zoning bylaws, reading site plans. I do it every day. Right now, my job is mainly working with a nonprofit in Cambridge doing affordable housing. Where I have worked with developers in the past, it hasn't been in front of Southborough at all. I haven't done anything in Southborough, and quite honestly, to develop in Southborough or have that aspiration, this would be the worst thing possible for me. I'm basically putting myself out there saying, anybody who wants to do anything in Southborough, I'm not your guy. It's very, very simple and very clear for anyone who's been involved in municipalities, understands how things work. If I were anywhere connected to them, they know there would be this cloud of suspicion and it would get defeated. It's quite honestly one of the most ludicrous things that I or a developer would ever want to do.
Follow-on question. I guess I actually happened to run across some meeting minutes from Shopsy from last October, where Shopsy was debating with the meeting letters possible waivers for a project that the developer proposed. The developer was represented by one of the partners, Cornerstone Engineering there. I didn't see in the minutes any disclosure on your part that there could be the appearance of conflict or any appeal, any information to address that. It seems to me, again, a concern relative to your attention to the conflict issue and I can tell you from personal experience as a former zoning board member, people pay attention to the look and feel of this process, and if there's appearance there, it, I think, undermines the integrity of the permitting process. To me, it's something that's worth great care, and I didn't see that in the Shopsy minutes. Do you recall that meeting? Did you do anything about that potential conflict?
I do recall that meeting. It's an informational meeting, so, you know, it was them presenting an idea. It wasn't up for a vote or anything of those nature. The person from Cornerstone is not who I have a relationship with. I've never met that person. I've never dealt with him in any way, shape, or form. So, in my view, that was not part of who I've worked with in the past. In relation to, you know, going forward on planning board, you know, I'd be happy to disclose this. It's not something I try to hide. It looked from that point of view as an informational meeting that, you know, there wasn't anything to it from the way I saw it at that point in time. Keeping in mind that Shopsy's an advisory board. We don't really have a say in anything. We can recommend, we can give an opinion, but at the end of the day, people can just say, thanks, see you later. So.
Okay, well, thank you. Having lived through this, I'm particularly sensitive to people looking for excuses to say the fix was in, the process was biased against me. I think it's entirely appropriate for the town and the board members, committee members, to be extraordinarily cautious about this one, because you've got to preserve the confidence of people in the process. Thank you.
I think I prove that as the issues come up. Thank you.
Donovan Daniel?
I've been trying to figure out how to do this. I have a question. Did you ever go to White's Corner?
Yeah, unfortunately, it was closed by the time I moved to town. I heard rumors.
No, we couldn't let that just hang there.
Yeah, I got it.
But I personally have never been to Starbucks and Bucks. I vowed many days in White's Corner that it wasn't going to be where I would go. And we miss a place like that, and I think that's the only real point of saying this. Because after a meeting like this, a lot of us would have gone down to White's Corner and had a drink together. After elections, we had great celebrations. There were, you know, it was a community place. And so maybe I could say, well, if you're going to be on the planning board, maybe you guys could plan something to replace White's Corner. They promised they would, but I don't think Tomas will quite.
No, and I would agree, and I think that's probably the point I'm trying to make. By the time I came to town, White's Corner had faded. But there needs to be change in the town that addresses the need for places like White's Corner in an environment that suits the town today and allows it to thrive in today's town, because today's town isn't the same as when White's Corner was thriving. And we need to adapt, and we need to accept the change without changing the nature of the town. We can still enhance it and bring back some of the things like a community place like White's Corner, but it will take some change versus what you see on the streets today.
I did go to White's Corner. And I agree with you, Donna, and a lot of what Craig said. We do need places like that, and as we move forward and the town changes, we can keep Southborough's uniqueness and add a gathering spot. Don't go tell stories out of school.
My wife is sitting here. Don't start. Best part about White's Corner was you could park around back, so if your wife drove by, she couldn't see your car. I never did that. Claire Reynolds.
Thank you. Claire Reynolds, 104 Main Street. I'm speaking on my own, even though I'm on several different committees. Mr. Nicholson, I'm confused. You said that you had no relationship with Cornerstone or the person representing them at an informational meeting that you were at with Shopsy? Did I not understand that correctly?
I'd never met the person from Cornerstone that was at that meeting. My relationship has been with Mike Sullivan directly. So I didn't know that person, and actually they didn't. I didn't know they were. I didn't know that person. I'd never met that person before.
Okay, so here's where I'm a little confused, and this kind of tags on to Sam's question, in that Cornerstone and particularly Mike Sullivan have, they're involved with many of the projects here.
I understand.
It would seem to me that if you were on the planning board, you would have to recuse yourself from a lot of the meetings where these particular, whatever it was, coming up using Cornerstone, that you would have to recuse yourself.
I'd have to look into the conflict of interest laws, but I don't think that's the case. I mean, from period of time when I've last dealt with them, which has been over a year at this point, I have no active projects in the area where I would use them again. I'm exclusively working in Cambridge right now. I really don't see where my past relationship with them would impact anything going forward, because I don't have any plans for a future relationship with them at this point, because
They're listed as a partner on your website.
it's correct, because I've worked with them in the past.
Okay. Another quick, do I have one question? Has anybody from the planning board or any of the other boards or committees in town contacted you regarding running?
No. Well, I've spoken with Chris Robbins, who I guess is on the EDC commission.
Yeah.
So I've spoken with him a few times about it, but it was just to broach the idea that there was an opening, and said, you should think about it. And that's what I did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Sujal Bulakia, 3 Ashley Road. So you actually saw 2 11-year-olds out here, and they're our daughters. Happy birthday, Greg. Thank you. You're missing the night with your daughter. Couple things. Starbucks, it was funny when you were saying that. I haven't been to the other place, but those 2 girls were nodding their heads when you were saying Starbucks. Apparently they got their mom. And the question to both of you, I think it's great to have this night here. It's great to see differing opinions. But, some of the things is we've been here for 10 years. Our daughters are going to grow up, and they'll go to college and come back. Can you both paint the vision of Southborough 10 years from now?
The vision of Southborough in 10 years.
That's a very good question. Although I don't have a crystal ball, I think a lot can be done to update our current zoning to help us move forward into the future and keep the things that we love about Southborough, the open space, the recreational facilities, while creating new opportunities for new development and new gathering places and new businesses and economic development.
I would say Southborough probably in the next 10 years won't change dramatically. There isn't a tremendous amount of land left to develop. Planning board isn't really so much. I guess where planning board comes into that is looking at the zoning laws and what does need to change. As the chair of the we recently redid the housing plan. One of the things that we noticed in it was that the population of Southborough is aging faster than any of our neighboring towns. And we have virtually zero mechanism to accommodate how to house those people as they age. We don't have any zoning to do effective congregate senior housing. We have caps on the amount of over 55 communities that we have. There's limits there. And I think the ability to address an aging population and have a place for them to go and remain active in the community opens up housing for younger people that keep the community thriving. Because it's the blend of the old and the new that's going to keep Southborough relevant. And if it putters along and keeps aging faster and faster, then we have a gap, and the gap will ultimately hurt the town. And so addressing those needs and having that be a part of it where we can bring those people into it and keep our seniors, because they're the people that know everything about the town. They're the ones that know White's Corner. And bringing them in and keeping them active and participating allows the town to benefit from it across the board.
Thank you so much. I love Starbucks and I love water.
Okay, Chris Robbins?
Hello, I'm Chris Robbins. I live on 39 Parkerville Road. I want to thank the two candidates for stepping forward and taking on this potential challenge you both may have. I think anybody getting on a committee deserves a medal, and we greatly appreciate you stepping forward for this important role. One of the things, I'm representing myself and not a committee that I serve on. I've served on the zoning board and I do serve on the economic development. One of the things the economic development team did prior to the formation of the official EDC is we retained Northeastern University to help us assess the deal makers and the deal breakers for retaining and attracting business and bringing residents to our community so we can grow and prosper. That will ensure our long-term economic destiny, our economic wellness, our social and environmental wellness. And one of the reasons, one of the findings, and this can be read on the website, is that we have one of the longest permitting processes in the Metro West, which impedes businesses and our residents from getting a fair, equitable, and reasonable predictable process to get a permit. And I know, Mimi, this question is for you, is that with your forceful advocacy for open space, how you step into the planning role and take a neutral position to advocate for the overall wellness of the town and collaborate in a way we haven't seen before, and how will you measure your performance in terms of how well you do in terms of streamlining the permitting process so we work together more effectively.
Thank you, Chris. As a member of the Open Space Preservation Commission, I was charged with advocating for facilitating the preservation of open space. That was the sole focus of that commission, and to advise other town entities on how to facilitate the preservation of open space. The planning board is far broader, and I fully understand that and will bring an independent view to the planning board without any bias. We, as a member of the Open Space Preservation Commission, we advocated for a process for open space preservation. So, excuse me. So there wouldn't be issues with the open space, and then everyone involved, proponents, board members, advisory boards, would all know how to move forward in the most effective way. So I would certainly, on the planning board, advocate for a process that would streamline for proponents and the boards and other town entities.
So actually, this is one of the areas that I think about a lot, and one of the areas that I've heard a lot from in talking to people in town. Right now, I think it's pretty safe to assume that our approving boards are not communicating well together. I think there's been stuff from town council mention it, there's been stuff from selectmen saying they need to do a better job. Having been on the other side of the table as a real estate person, I've seen where communities have enacted somewhat of a triage approach to anything coming before the town, where a representative from each organization that ultimately has to approve it sees it right when it comes in. And it's a mechanism that allows the ZBA to know what the planning board's working on, the planning board to know what the Conservation Commission's going to do, and have them all look at it in a global perspective from the point of view of the town, rather than strictly with blinders of, this is the waiver I'm looking at, this is the site plan I'm looking at, This is the conservation component I'm looking at and making decisions in a vacuum. Having, again, been on the other side of the table, this is the experience I bring in trying to implement something like that that gets our community running the process because we're all talking together across the boards. And that's where I would ensure a consistent and predictable time frame wise, not necessarily outcome, because that would be completely wrong, but a predictable time frame wise of how things go through, because you don't get the situation of one board raising their hand going, well, what about us? You just did something that totally ties our hands, and now we have to go and redo everything, and we're going to have to recreate the wheel. So that is one of the things that I would really strive for on the planning board, is to get our approving boards more in sync. Thank you.
Are you talking about the meeting or about the question? Yeah, okay. Okay. And then, if it's all right, after your question, I have something prompted me. So I think I'll use my authority to... No, all right, I will. So, I get 20 seconds, huh? This prompted, one of the things that Greg Nicholson said prompted me to ask this. And it has to do with the variety of housing we have here. And I happened to be at the town meeting probably 25 years ago or so, when the idea of cluster zoning came up. And, because we're a town that has just septic systems and not sewerage, but there were new septic systems, new technology being developed. 55 and over housing began about, 20 or 25 years ago. So I guess my question is this. At that town meeting or subsequent town meeting, there was a percentage of the total housing allowed for 55 and over senior housing, which at the time I guess seemed okay. But not just because I was younger, but what is seniors don't cost the towns the amount of money that other people do that send children to school and so forth. So what is the logic, if there is logic, what is the logic behind having, I think it's 7% or some such number of total housing be limited to cluster zoning for 55 and over? It just seems to me, and we don't have a limit on housing for people between 40 and 55 or 30 and 40. So if somebody can tell me, please help me out. What's the logic?
To be honest, I wasn't there, so I don't know what the discussion was for that point. But
all these towns seem to have.
At some point, again, if you just allow for new development for older people and you restrict it to that, you can lose the younger people coming in. And when I say there needs to be some level of housing for seniors, it's not just single-family homes or duplexes or condos that they go in and live in and are independent and they're 55, but we have to have something for people that are 75 or 85 or 95 that still keep them involved in the town, because it's very important as people age that they remain feeling relevant and feeling included and not isolated. And that's just key across the board for most people. And a lot of what I deal with in Cambridge with the nonprofit I work for is focusing on how to make sure that all segments of the community have proper housing. Because at the end of the day, that's what keeps the community thriving. I don't know why it was 7% or not 8% or 10% or anything like that, but I can see where if that's the only way you can get scale and do clusters and have a shared septic system, then there would be a perceived mentality that that's what a developer wants to do because that's what will maximize that particular lot. So I can see that as a potential reason to have a cap. But I can't say that there's a reason to have a cap just on senior housing, period. So that would be my view on it.
Well, I think historically we were a community of single-family homes, and back then I think there was some fear of cluster development, and that they didn't want, instead of single-family homes, for it to be all multifamily housing or all condos. Additionally, the over 55 was intended to be owned by nonprofit or community housing organizations, so to give some affordability to over 55 housing. So I think that bylaw needs to be looked at and updated.
Okay. Betsy, you wanted to talk about the town meeting?
No, this is for the zoning, for the senior housing. So the reason that they put a 7% cap on it was the zoning board was afraid that nobody would buy them and they'd end up with a lot of empty apartments, which obviously hasn't happened. And we never, that was just for one development, one that I live in that's been there 20-something years. I do want to note that I'm the only person from Southborough who lives there. And if you go to Carriage Hill, or you go to some of the others, I mean, if we're talking about what do we want to do for Southborough, it doesn't, I don't know why, but not a lot of people from Southborough seem to be actually interested in these units. And I think for some of them it's too expensive, and they aren't that well. It depends on which one. So it bothers me that people who they've moved in from another town, they're very nice people, they're not interested in Southborough at all. I send them little emails about it's town meeting and it's time to go in the bargain box and stuff. And it's just, so keep that maybe in mind. If we're doing it for Southborough people, I think we're missing something there that isn't bringing them to these units.
Betsy.
I'm Betsy Roosevelt, 5 Strawberry Hill Road. I've lived here since 1999. Anecdotally, it seems to be in the last decade we've gone through maybe more than our fair share of town planners. I'm not an expert, I don't know. It just seems to me that they come through rather quickly in the last decade. Maybe this is the norm, I don't know. If you could comment on that, and if you perceive that we do have a higher than average turnover rate for this area, could you speak to maybe what you would do to retain the town planner for more than a few years?
I certainly hope that's not the norm. I think the planning board should work collaboratively to set out goals for the town planner, so the town planner will know what's expected of them and what they should be doing, and so they're not pulled in a million different directions. Our town planners have kind of done everything, been chief cook and bottle washer, and been pulled to every different committee. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but there should be a clear definition of what the town planner job is, and worked on collaboratively with the whole planning board to set that.
I think the thing that really helps in keeping someone on board, any employee on board, is providing them with the tools to be successful. So in terms of a planner, you need to keep them getting educated. You need to keep them focused on goals that are important to the town, but also important to being a planner. I mean, we can't have them going to, again, like Mimi said, every different committee meeting, because that's not really the true point of the planner. And so as the planning board, you really have to nurture your employee, which the town planner is, and you have to give them the support to be successful. A successful planner makes the planning board successful. And so it really, it goes up, and, you know, a successful planning board makes the town successful. So it's with any employee. You make them successful and everything else looks good. And if you give them the tools to be successful, ideally they're ultimately happy in their job and they want to stay.
Who does the town planner currently report to, if we have one?
Well, there isn't one, but
Okay, would they report to the elected planning board, or does the town manager take a role
no,
in?
they report to the planning board. Yeah.
Mr. Stella, this will be the last question, then we'll go to the closing comments.
Ideally, the thing that I would certainly be looking for is that after sitting in the Southport a number of boards through the years,
Could you speak up just a tad? Sorry.
sort of sense that,
Thank you.
Sort of sense that we're in the process of, when we go to planning board or ZBA or conservation, we basically are solving today's problems as they come forward. I don't see any big picture looking over the horizon and, for instance, looking over what the problems in zoning, what could be. Some of the things that I look at is, for instance, you know, how we're going to be dealing with the driverless automobiles, and how we're going to have drones, and how we're going to have no-fly zones and stuff like that. So, and how we're going to deal with that. For instance, you get Main Street, which basically we wanted to do Main Street. There was a lot of talk about the wiring and all that other stuff. With today's technology, I mean, you know, with solid oxide fuel cells, I mean, we don't need any wires anymore. We can do all this stuff in our home, so it's not a big deal. So we can eliminate all these things. But the long and short of it is, there was some instance where we were talking about the process going through for the town to get permitting. I think all should probably look at 2144, which is a Senate bill which is being proposed. And I don't know if you're both aware of that, but this is a process to expedite and get things through the planning board and ZBA. So that will facilitate a lot of this problem in the state proposing that now. Thank you.
Wait, there was not a question. So, closing statements?
Thank you all very much again. I'd like to thank the Library Board of Trustees, Director Donovan, and staff for hosting this fabulous event, and our fabulous moderator, Mr. Wilson. As I said before, I'd like to reiterate, I've been involved in town government for 13 years. I'm very familiar with the running and dealing with the planning board. I believe in transparent government and would work to ensure that all planning board deliberations are in full public view. Through the Open Space Preservation Commission, we listened a lot to concerns of abutters to proposed developments, and we worked very hard to mitigate those concerns. On the planning board, I would continue to listen to the public's view. I thank you very much, and I ask you for your vote on May 9th.
I want to thank everybody for coming. Having been to town meeting and seeing the level of engagement from our town, which isn't always as much as we'd like to see, it's good to see people come out and come to these things. I've been involved in town for a while. I have a very strong view of giving back to the community. I've been involved in coaching soccer and chairman of SHOPSI, chairman of the Recreation Commission. Understanding zoning, understanding site plans, understanding that stuff is what I do on a daily basis in Cambridge for a nonprofit doing affordable housing. I understand some of the challenges that Cambridge is going to. They're not the same as Southborough, but some of the consistent things are, how do you deal with your community? And I think I'm positioned in a way to address those. And as Mr. Acela said, look at things that are coming down the pike, not right in front of us today. What's right in front of us today, we have zoning laws that we have to look at things that, compared to what is in front of us today. So having that external view of the world allows me to look at what's coming down the pike and probably being in a position to work with the fellow planning board members and come up with ideas that's going to allow Southborough to address them going forward. May 9th is the election. I'd appreciate all of your votes, and thank you very much.
Unless there's a further word from the library board, that concludes the meeting. Thank you all for attending. There's still a lot of refreshments in the back. Feel free to help yourselves. Thank you. All set?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
have
I
a
just
final-
want to say, hold on.
Hold on.
And everybody, let's just have a round of applause for John Wilson moderating. He was awesome.